Save money and time by traveling during sleeping. So this is how it works. First of all, driving doesn't really work, so this is kind of a knockout, at least when you are driving on your own. The thing you need to realize is this. Usually what happens when we travel is we spend time awake traveling, and therefore traveling is not the best experience ever, often. At least within Europe, where cities are within the reach of a few hundred kilometers, if you drive from city to city, I mean, it's the same, I guess, everywhere around the world. It's just that in Europe there are very many points of interest where you can travel overnight. The thing is, if you sleep now, during the travel, what you essentially save is the money for the accommodation, because the accommodation is basically also your means of transport, or is your means of transport. The next thing that happens is that you save time, because essentially you arrive in the morning in a different city. So for example, you could do a 5-day trip. You could do 5 different cities. Of course, I mean, it depends if it is a round trip or not, but in between the days you just don't go to a hostel or a hotel, and you don't sleep anywhere, because you sleep in the bus or you sleep in the train. And what this essentially allows you to do is to go to bed after a long day in a city and charge all of your devices, which is nowadays possible in most trains and most buses. So in Europe there's a company called Flixbus, which is quite dominant within Central Europe, and they also nowadays have plugs where you, not plugs but sockets, where you can actually plug in all your stuff. Therefore, if you, for example, have a camera with you, so this is something I already did in the past, you can just get a multi-charger, which is basically a charger that with a single plug charges all of your USB devices. Of course, you have to kind of get everything USB-defied. Therefore, you should be able to charge for. Nowadays, you are already able to charge your notebook also via USB-C, and you can charge all of your devices because you have a socket pretty much at every seat. In the trains, it's sometimes different. There sometimes are not as many sockets as on the Flixbuses, and you arrive in the city center. Whereas, for example, if you drove with the car, you maybe also would arrive in the city center, but you would also have to drive in the city center. Then there is this thing about congestions, because either, of course, when it comes to driving with a train or riding a train, I don't know what the proper phrase is, there are no congestions, at least most of the time, because the trains often wait on other trains because there is only one great road. But when it comes to traveling via car or via bus, the thing is that, well, if the Flixbus, for example, or the bus in general, drives at night, then the congestion usually is at a lower rate than during the day, because most people are awake during the day, and therefore you also don't spend that much time on digestion. Not digestion, but on congestion. I guess it's a similar concept. That's the reason the word is similar. Now, what this allows you to do is, for example, you could do a 5-day trip within Europe. You start, for example, so what I did already is I started in Munich, not really in Munich, but kind of in Salzburg. So this is an Austrian city, one of the biggest Austrian cities. Then we traveled overnight to Zurich. In Zurich, it was like one accommodation, and then the next night was spent in a train, traveling to Paris and then to Amsterdam. And in Amsterdam, we also spent one night only at a hostel. The next day was again spent on the train, driving to Paris. No, it actually wasn't Paris, it was Brussels. And then it was only Brussels during the day, and in the evening we already drove to Paris. And in Paris it was the same. I don't know if we stayed like 1 or 2 nights, but essentially you almost, if you spend between 1 or 2 days in a city, you can almost do every second night at your actual means of transport, and you get rid of the accommodation, which saves you anywhere from 10 to 50 to 100 if you get a hostel or a hotel, even bucks, I guess, or if you get an Airbnb. I mean, it's also prices range probably anywhere from $5 a month, not a month, for €5 or dollars per night to, I mean, if you get a 5-star suite at some fancy hotel, of course, yeah, then this travel tip probably also is nothing for you. It's the same with planes, I guess. You can just travel overnight, but with planes, maybe the advantage of actually seeing the thing you're flying over is also something. I mean, if you are flying overseas, then the only thing you see is pretty much a sea, I guess. But when it comes to traveling or flying over continents, then it actually can be quite interesting. Of course, only up to a certain point where you have seen enough, kind of, or you may have seen the same